And what is Charlotte Motor Speedway like? Like as a track, is there a comparable track to it, or is it kind of one of its own type of thing?
It's its own,
Nope. I'm just gonna put my foot on the floor and I'm not lifting till I see God or a checkered flag.
All right, we're back racing with KLAS podcast. Race weekend. Here we go. It's going to be a very interesting weekend because a couple of content buddies of mine, we all got a hair up our butt, and we're going to road trip starting when we're recording now Wednesday night, and we will be there Friday in the pit with KLAS Motorsports. This is
Yes,
going to be wild.
I just finished the truck driver's homemade apple crisp and ice cream. He's been talking about it all day. So now the Charlotte weekend officially started. So it was only after I finished that, because that's been talked about for all day. So that just needed to happen. Not a big sugar guy, so I think I'm already feeling that a little bit. But yep.
All right,
excited you're coming out though. That's awesome.
What is the difference in race weekend in Charlotte as compared to everywhere else? Because this is like home for every team, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean it feels like home for me, and I don't even live here. Yeah, we drive by the place all the time. We race in the area, and usually all these trips involve leaving the shop and flying and travel days and all that. This is definitely home for us. And being from the Buffalo area, and just the Northeast in general, so many, and being involved with racing, so many people from that we know, friends, family, have made their way down here with so many jobs in racing and having racing connections. And obviously it's been a pretty, popular place that people have come just, people trying to get out of the Northeast. So, the weather's a little bit nicer. So it ends up being one where, we have a lot of family that's able to come check it out too. And, a lot of family from the Northeast comes down and it makes a vacation out of it with, seeing people that they haven't seen in a little bit that have already made the move. So, and obviously all the race teams are headquartered down here. So it definitely feels like we're kind of hosting everybody for sure.
And what is Charlotte Motor Speedway like? Like as a track, is there a comparable track to it, or is it kind of one of its own type of thing?
It's its own, we always get nostalgic here. And you always go there and you feel like it's, 1997 and it's the Winston, and there's just such an awe. Probably really just because of that race, because that was the race of the special paid schemes, and it was always a night race, and the flash bulbs are going off, and you never knew what the special paint scheme was going to be. So there was always an aura around Charlotte Motor Speedway, and then obviously the following weekend was the longest race of the year, the Coke 600, and Memorial Day weekend, and all the cars are going to have a patriotic paint scheme, and we have a patriotic paint scheme as well that we're going to debut it here in a little bit. So, there's definitely just so many reasons to be excited about Memorial Day weekend at Charlotte Motor Speedway and everything that goes around it. We're gonna have a huge guest list, and like I say, it's racing in our backyard, and everyone's gonna come check out the shop too. That's gonna come to the race, and it's just a cool weekend.
So this is kind of interesting because I'm taking two guys to the track Friday and Saturday who've never been to a stock car race. So the content we're going to shoot is going to try to kind of be from that perspective, and then obviously showcasing the KLAS Motorsports. If somebody is like never been to a stock car race, and you were going to try to explain the atmosphere to people, is there another sport atmosphere that's close?
No. I mean, maybe football, maybe like pregame at a football game, but I'm from Buffalo. So probably, maybe like a Buffalo Bills football game. Certainly there's, you're going to see campers, lined up, and people have, these campsites are going to have their own little displays or gimmicks or games or things they got going on, or, they might have a stage and have a little concert or something. I mean, NASCAR fans kind of, a lot of these fans travel and like this is what they do. This is their hobby. This is what they do when they're not at work. This is their passion. And it's, going to these races, being passionate about racing and coming to and having some fun with it and it's having a good time. So you definitely feel that when you're down there at any racetrack, certainly. And for someone that's never seen a car go whizzing by at like 200 miles an hour, once the race starts, it's pretty shocking. So, and obviously you guys are going to be behind the scenes with us, so you're going to kind of see how it all works, and you're going to be up on pit road. You're going to see live pit stops and everything that comes around with it. So, but just Charlotte in general, I keep saying there's an aura here. There really is. There's just something special about this place, and this is Dale Earnhardt's backyard, and just everything that's NASCAR is right here. It's just cool to be a part of that tradition and continue it, and just be one of the guys that gets to race on this really cool racetrack for sure.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. I was like, "Man, are we nuts? We're gonna road trip like 17 hours," and then I thought, "Oh, no, this is NASCAR. There are fans that are gonna be traveling from farther than we will just for this race because."
Oh yeah, Memorial Day weekend at Charlotte's a biggie. It's certainly you know, the first one that's always going to come up in a conversation is Talladega, and justifiably so. I have pictures to prove it from our last adventure that can never be shared on the internet. But, um, you know, Daytona is Daytona, but, Memorial Day weekend in Charlotte, it's like the weather's changing, summer's here. Everyone's going to be out grilling and just, and obviously there's it's a racing weekend. People wake up on Sunday, they watch Monaco, they watch the Indy 500. So there's so much racing associated with Memorial Day weekend, and then they tie it in with the patriotic side of it with Memorial Day, and NASCAR has done a really good job just kind of making 1,000 reasons to be excited about this weekend, and it's the longest race of the year. It's a arguably one of the most historical races on their calendar. You got by Daytona 500, the Southern 500, and the Coke 600. They're all right there. These are just marquee events on the NASCAR calendar, and they've been running this race since 1960. And it's one of those races that all the drivers want to say they had it. They won this race once, and it makes it special. And you can't fabricate that. It has to be authentic, and it's just so authentically pure here, and you definitely feel it, and people get excited about it. And when the green flag drops, you're going to see a day transition into night event, and it's a grind, and it's just such a throwback to how racing used to be, with man versus machine, and being in that car for as long as you're going to be in that car. It's a grind going 600 miles, and back in the day, it was where the car is going to make it. Now these guys, that extra 100 miles is a lot. That's like almost, a whole ARCA race, really, that just added it on to the rest of a cup race. So, it's cool. It's special. It really is. And, I'm glad you guys are going to have an opportunity to see it up close. And, it's definitely the type of weekend you're going to go and fall in love with all this, because it's not boring.
Yeah, so I'm excited. We're gonna have a lot of extra content. If you're watching this on YouTube, there'll be some extra content from the race. I'm excited for it. So the General Tire 150. Let's see here, 150 miles, 100 laps. The track, for if you're not familiar with it, mile and a half, paved tri-oval. I don't even know what that means.
So basically, Bill France kind of, I don't know if he came up with the idea or if it was something people did, but the reason that there's a curvature to like the front straightaway at Daytona and all these tracks is so a fan sitting on the front straightaway can see the whole straightaway. Because if it's a straight line, you can't look down and see the cars coming. Where if it's curved, you can, wherever you're sitting, you have a good view of the entire front straightaway. So they design these tracks a little bit different now. Daytona's got, just a regular bend. This one's kind of more squared off, and they've kind of copied the shape for some other tracks. But Charlotte was the first one to have this particular design. Atlanta incorporated it, and Texas incorporated it later. But it definitely makes it exciting. The the force on the suspension of the cars going into turn one is greater here than at any other track. Bristol, all of them. There's a lot of banking, and you're coming in with that big arc, and you're going to throw it down in there, and be going through them bumps and hope for the best. So, it's a lot of strain on the car. It's a lot of G forces on the driver. You're hauling ass there. We got the same rear gear in there that we would run at like a Daytona. So we're unrestricted. So we're slowing down in the corners more, but we're getting up to it on the straightaways, and you're going to see a lot of aero blocking and using of the air and side drafting and everything else. So Charlotte's cool. Charlotte's a driver's racetrack. It's bumpy. You gotta kind of take a weird line around the track to miss some of the bumps. You go into turn 3 and you drive in like you're gonna hit the wall, and then at the last second you turn down and you end up driving down to the paint. So, because a big bump over there at 3, you don't want to be knocking the car around over that, because that just gets everything upset. Even going down the back straightaway, there's a bump down the back straightaway. So the farthest the left front of the car will travel is actually on the back straightaway. That's how much force is generated going down the back straightaway with the different shapes of the track and all that. So it's a neat track. It's an interesting challenge. It's like where you went to Kansas last week, you can kind of spread out kind of 3 wide and run different lanes. Here you really gotta you gotta work against the racetrack and what the racetrack's going to give you. So there's definitely going to be you have to be a little bit more aggressive, getting to some traction where you're going to need it, and get to the best part of the racetrack to prevail in these battles. So you'll probably see some pretty aggressive moves just to try to, especially like restarts and all that. So should be a good race.
Before we get into your prep, because you had an interesting video that hit social media about your prep for this weekend that I sent around to all my buddies, and I was like, this is cool. Favorite, you're a racing historian guy. Do you have a favorite moment at this track, like historic moment at Charlotte that like comes to your mind whenever you step out there?
Just me or just racing in general?
Just racing in general.
Certainly Earnhardt in '87 with the pass in the grass. Doing some, if you really watch, so back then the Winston was broken down into segments, which the Winston was the All-Star race. And the last segment was 10 laps, and Earnhardt was trying to hold off a much faster Bill Elliott. It was, if you watched all 10 laps, it was pretty dirty. But he held on, and it certainly made for, it's sort of an interesting example of kind of, the driver that Earnhardt was at that time, and why some of the other drivers are probably frustrated with him. But, certainly that one, a lot of these cool moments, they come in the Winston, right? That the All-Star race, I believe it was the next year, Darrell Waltrip crosses the line and the engine blows up right at the start finish line, ironically. And they all said, well, he's cheating. He just pushed the clutch in. And then, in '92, you have One Hot Night, which is Earnhardt's lead going into 3, gets turned around by Kyle Petty. And then Davey Allison comes flying up, passes Kyle Petty when he lets off for the wreck. And then Kyle Petty gets into him and ends up in a shower of sparks and knocked out. And he ends up winning the race. And he woke up in the hospital, and he's looking around. And the first question he asks is, did I win? And just so many, the Winston was just such a cool race. It's just something you always look forward to. And then, in the mid '90s, Earnhardt comes out with the silver car, right? And it's like this big secret, because like back then, it was like smiling in pictures in 1880s. Like you just didn't do it. Like you went to the track with the same color car every week, right? No one had special, like now, they go to the track with different color every damn week. But they kept the car hidden, but it was reverse color, it was black, silver. They switched them. And that was like a big deal. And it kind of started this trend of the special paint schemes for the Winston. So it was so cool to see Dale Earnhardt in an orange Wheaties car, or like Jeff Gordon in the Chroma Premier car. And, all these guys that do all these just badass paint schemes. And it always ended up being just such an exciting race. There was the year where it rained going into 1 on the first lap, and they let the guys unload the backup cars and restart the race. And, just so many cool memories and just cool races that I remember growing up and watching here. And, there was just something so special too, just about the Coke 600, just watching, this race that would start in the day and you just got done watching Indy and, every once in a while there'd be like a Tony Stewart was trying to run bolts. So you'd watch the Indy 500 and then you'd be following, okay, where's Tony? Is he going to get there in time? And they see him get out of the helicopter and he gets in the car. And I think he finished every lap the one year that he did it. I think he finished like, he finished decent at Indy and then fourth maybe in the Cup race. He finished about every lap. So there's just so many cool things to watch. And it's just such a cool racing weekend. And I don't know that one really sticks out more than the other, but just something about just watching that race get going and watching the sun go down and know that these boys are going to be, grinding all night. It was just one of the coolest races to watch every year. And it was always associated with Charlotte and, the home for NASCAR, Dale Earnhardt's backyard. When I first got into this, it was always Daytona. I wanted to do Daytona. And, when we got some sponsorship from, Kevin LaPierre and Todd Jody from Florida Safety and everyone that started jumping in and, we started talking about maybe we could go to Charlotte, and I drove past this place that there was an aura about it. I'm like, oh my God, if I could turn some laps there, just pull it in there with a race car, knowing that I was going to race there that day. Daytona was amazing, but there was something about going to Charlotte that was just like, oh, this is just so cool, and it was a test and we worked on the car all night. And I remember going out there and I was up to speed really good. And we had Andy there and everyone, and I came in the pits and I forget how I did it, but I came on the radio and I'm like, hey, send Uncle Jake to the back straightaway. And they're like, okay, why? Because it was the Andy J racing back then. So everyone just listened. And he's like, okay, we're on the back straightaway. What do you need? I'm like, okay, when I go by, tell me if I look like Dale Earnhardt in the Winston, because I'm at Charlotte. This is cool. Like, you're an asshole. It goes back to the pit. But just, yeah, there's something about it, just as a fan, even like the Days of Thunder movie, that's where they, turn two gets slick as a button and, just, I don't know, just so cool. Well, I'm not allowed anymore. He's banned me because he let me do one of his league races, and I thought that this one particular driver was blocking me pretty bad, and he kind of ruined my race. So, going past the checkered flag when he slowed down and pulled out of the groove, I may or may not have put his trunk through his windshield, and apparently the guy submitted a complaint and Rowdy got written up and now he's not allowed to crash on iRacing for 6 months or something. So Rowdy's all mad at me, but basically my computer broke and I'm a jack of all trade, master of none. I can work on race cars. I'm not great at it. I'm good at driving race cars. That's my one thing, but everything else I just sort of half-ass along just to get by in life. So I attempted to fix my computer and it did not go well. So I finally gave up and I brought it to a computer guy. And after about the second day of him working on it, he's like, yeah, it was going to be a little bit. I'm like, okay, I got to find a simulator. So I called Matt. I asked him, if he wanted to hang out and do some sim time. He said, sure. So I went over there and, we got there a little late. I was hoping his mom was going to make some snacks, but, she went to bed. So I was a little disappointed, but, we had the energy drinks going and it was pretty cool. It was very helpful. His simulator is really, really cool. And, Rowdy, my friend Rowdy, he's one of my best friends. He's one of my crew guys. He actually, if you pull up NASCAR Heat 5, he's a playable character. His name's Matt Heel. He's a character in the video game. You play as him. So when NASCAR Heat 5 came out, they had some contest to get the 5 best sim drivers, and he was one of the 5 best. So he was actually, the reason we call him Rowdy is he was actually endorsed to drive for the Joe Gibbs Racing sim racing team. And he was sponsored by Rowdy Energy. So he's a Rowdy number 51. So when we first met this kid, he was the Joe Gibbs Racing simulator driver. And he had this pack full of Rowdies and they're all different flavors. And you'd say, okay, would you like to sample this kite? Or would you like to sample this? It's very crisp and refreshing. This one here is very smooth and relaxing. I'm just like, geez, just give me one of these stupid energy drinks. I don't know what to do with this guy. And so he's very we kept him around, and he's very serious about his sim racing. So I knew he'd have a good sim rig. So I went over there to practice for a few hours. It was very, very helpful. He let me try his virtual reality goggles. That was a trip. That was like, my brain thought I was in the race car. Like I could reach out and touch like the mirror that Mike Dayton welded in the car. Like I could see the doormat that Mike Dayton zip tied into the fucking race car. Like it was like I was tripping out. Like I was driving home and I still felt weird because like my brain thinks I'm driving a race car, but my brain also knows I'm playing a video game. And like you're like side drafting and like you're looking over at the guy. Like it is like it made my head hurt. It was so weird. So got to do that for a couple hours, and it was very, very helpful. Always helpful. I'm actually going to sim race again at our spotter Charlie Brown's after this. Stepping in this weekend for TJ Majors. He's taking a week off. He's got a couple health things he's dealing with, so we wish him a very, very speedy recovery, and he expects to be back in a couple weeks with us in Michigan or shortly thereafter. So shout out to him. We're thinking about him. Everything's gonna be good, but it take a couple weeks off to take care of some stuff.
All right, how are we feeling going into Charlotte? What's well, first of all, what car are we bringing? You have an affectionate name for all of them.
We're bringing Jaws, same car we ran at Kansas. Felt like we got Corey Dade pretty hard there at Kansas last year, and it was kind of a rebuild, and we weren't bad. We had good short run speed, but we definitely lost a step somewhere. We weren't as fast. No one's as fast as the Pinnacle car right now. That thing's just silly. It's just kicking our asses. But we were the gap was smaller before. The gap got a little bigger again. So Mike Dayton, knew a couple things after we put it back together that he could see with doing the setup that we could improve on to get it a little bit closer to where it was last year, and we were able to make a couple adjustments and get a little bit closer. Just some aero stuff, a couple setup things, but just skew and getting everything you can out of the car, just mechanically to make the car go down the track sideways. And that's kind of the game we're all playing. And we were giving up a little bit based on what the rules will allow. So we were able to, actually, it required a different Varen housing and make that calculation. And the numbers came out much, much better. So expect to be a little bit better. We're still playing. We learned a couple things with the test session that we're going to try to implement. Still playing catch up. Still got a shorter notebook, but kind of starting over a little bit with this car. But just basically, the car just would fire off good, and it would just build tight, which means as the run went on, it would, the car just want to drive straight more and more. Like the right front tire was wearing out, and the right front tire was wearing out. So working on that, working on some aero gains, and hoping to get some speed back out of it, and hopefully have a good weekend here in Charlotte.
All right. Well, like I said, extra content this week. In fact, as soon as I get done here, I'm going to slam this episode together. We're going to get this thing out, and then maybe a little road trip content that could hit some of the KLAS socials as the guys are going to be in the car for. Well, by the time the guys get here, they'll have been in the car 6 hours, and we're going to do another 18 hours probably. So 3 middle-aged guys all road tripping to Charlotte. This is it's going to be it's going to be an experience.
That's a hoot. I went Dallas, Charlotte, Buffalo, Charlotte to Dallas once, and then Dallas back. So that's the only thing that I got that's gonna come close to your deal. A couple go to Daytona and back, but that's like 16. So that's a honker for sure. So I'm sure you guys will figure out some way to make that fun.
Oh yeah, but we're gonna try to limit the road snacks. I told the guys, I was like, listen, we can't. We start down that road, a trip that long, and we'll get out of the car feeling like we did 90 hours on the road. So let's do trail mix, water, few energy drinks, but let's not go ham. We're way too old to be doing that stuff. I can't do that stuff.
Yeah, no, and there's much better snacks available at your local Dax Markets.
Dax Market
might be on the way,
We might actually, we actually will be on there. We will be able to actually hit a Dax Market.
Yeah, so, I haven't, I haven't traversed in a car enough around there. I know they're in your area, Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, and all that. I keep flying. I got to do a good roadie out there someday. Just kind of learn where all this stuff is because it does bother me.
Yeah.
Just I like knowing where everything is, but I haven't got out there enough yet to really get a good lay of the landscape. But yeah, no, certainly. If you do that, give us you got to walk in there, and this is dumb because Kevin's gonna see this, but you got to be like, oh my god, like I saw you on a race car with this guy Andy Jankowiak. Oh, what a great driver you guys got, and then they'll go back to Kevin and be like, oh my god, this is great. I'm just kidding. But
You'll
no,
tell, like, 3 random
God.
guys just walked in and were like,
Yeah, race car advertising.
"It's working."
It's working.
All right. Well, good luck this weekend. I'll see you here in about 24 hours, and we'll have some fun. And good luck to the team.
Thank you. Yep, we're all locked and loaded, ready to go, and it'll be one long day, but we'll have some fun, and you stick around for Saturday. We'll have some more fun.
All right. More content this weekend, and then we'll see you next week with another episode.